Thank
joke.
you.
And we heard this from a bus driver many years ago going to Seward. And he said that Seward used to be a fishing town with a drinking problem, and then the Valdez oil spill made it a drinking town with a fishing problem, which is sad but true, I think. That's the Kenai Peninsula, and if you come back to Alaska and you decide to take a different routing, many of the ships that go into Anchorage area stop at Seward, and then you transfer from Seward to Anchorage, and you can actually stay a few days in Seward. It's a charming little town, and there are day trips out of the Seward for the Kenai Peninsula, which is really exquisite. And actually, the trip from Seward, we've done it by train a couple of times and by bus a couple of times, and weirdly enough, we like the bus better than the train. We think sometimes the train is a little narrow in its views, where you get a more expansive view by bus, plus it's cheaper. The other joke that I have to tell is a cruise joke, and I heard this years ago from a cruise comedian, and then I didn't hear it again, so I sort of claimed it was my own. And then I've started to hear it again from the cruise comedian, so I have to give attribution to it. But this, you all will relate to this. This was a woman who had been on a cruise for a week, and she was taking the shuttle back to the airport. And she realized that she'd enjoyed a lot of food, and her skirt was a little tight to step up on the step of the shuttle bus. So she reached behind her and she loosened the zipper in the back of her skirt a little bit and tried again to step onto the shuttle bus and realized, oh my goodness, this is worse than I thought. So she loosened it again the second time, and then from behind her, the man who was standing next in line reached under her bottom and lifted her up into the shuttle bus. And she turned around and she said, "Excuse me, what made you think you could do that?" And he said, "Well, ma'am, after you unzipped my fly twice." So that's my joke.
You didn't tell them about the goods.
Oh, yes, this is an apocryphal story, I think, but a woman was divorced in middle age, and she did research online and decided she'd move to Anchorage because there were many more men than women in Anchorage. And she came back home after a year, and her friend said, "What happened? We thought you went to Anchorage because the odds were good." And she said, "Well, the odds were good, but the goods were odd."
Great. Well, I want to begin by thanking all of you for your patience with with the lectures, because we've had a lot of material to cover, and fortunately it's all available to you. For those of you who didn't get it onto your iPads or whatever you want, you can communicate with CEI and they'll send you the link. Again, I do have a stick that you could load onto a pad if you had a pad, but you can get that connection. And it's important, always the best learning is going back over then what you've learned and reviewing it, and then those synapses remain open or open more easily and come back to you. So we've tried to have a lot of repetition throughout the lecture to drive home those points, and with visual and auditory learning techniques. Come on up here and sit down if you want to. You don't need to stand in the back. You can come on up anytime you want. So there's coffee and cookies.
Maybe we should remind them that they will receive their certification of the coursework electronically, and they're pretty prompt about that, so that should come.
Will it be within the week, you think?
If you have printed legibly and they can read it and I mail it to them, I don't think it'll be as fast as a week, but it will be pretty quickly.
Within a couple of weeks.
Because I have to get home and mail it to them, and then we're not going to be home for a little while. We're still traveling, so.
But if you need it sooner than that, call them and see if they can work something out for you.
Yeah, if you need it for your license or
Frantically.
frantic, why, you know, they can help you. Very good. All right, well, we're going to finish up then with the myths and truths about care of skin, hair, and nails. Some of this we talked about in the structure and function course. Some of it we talked about in infectious diseases. So we will be coming back and reviewing some of that. As before, this is always available for questions. So if you have a question, why, don't hesitate to ask. I do have my magnifying glass, so if somebody's desperately concerned about something, I'll be happy to take a look. I'll get some good light from the window when I'm done. If you have additional questions that are unanswered, don't hesitate to come up afterwards. I'm here and I'm happy to answer those questions, or if you see me around the ship this afternoon or tonight, why, I'm happy to do that. Sue has some cards back there with our email address. I use our home address, and so you can get a hold of us that way. So, off to the myths and truths about care of skin, hair, and nails. So, you see who is giving this lecture for those of you who are new to the audience. The person is Roy Steele Rogers III. Now, there is another guy named Roy Rogers. He's in this picture. He's the guy who has his left arm around me. I'm the little guy in the middle. It's the 1947 Snow Hill Country Club. And that's an Ohio boy, Leonard Sly. And that's my dad to my left, Dr. Roy S. Rogers Jr. He was a dentist. He practiced with his father, Dr. Roy S. Rogers Sr. And the Sly family, Leonard's family, were patients of my grandfather's before they moved to California. So we're the real Roy Rogers, and he's Leonard Sly. So I come from a family of dentists in southern Ohio. My grandfather had the Sly family as patients. They lived in Duck Run, Ohio, which is down near the river near Portsmouth. The Sly family moved to California. One son, Leonard, was the lead singer of a group he got together and called the Sons of the Pioneers. And the Sons of the Pioneers worked for Republic Pictures, and Republic Pictures made cowboy movies. And Gene Autry was the star in every cowboy movie. So he wore a white hat, white clothes. He sang songs. He got the bad guys who wore black hats and black clothes. And he got the girl at the end of the movie. The Sons of the Pioneers helped him. They sang lots of songs. They wore white clothes. They helped get the bad guys, but they didn't get any girls. So that was the whole shtick of the movies. Then World War II came, and Gene Autry was drafted to entertain troops, and he wasn't available to always make movies. Republic Pictures' demand for movies, however, was increasing, and so they needed a backup. They needed somebody to substitute for Gene Autry. Leonard was good looking. He could sing, he could play the guitar, and of course his teeth were excellent because of his early childhood dental care. And they said, Leonard, we want to make you a movie star. So he was said, if you have this name Sly and it's a time of war, that's a bad connotation. And he figured out what connotation meant. And then they said, pick a stage name and one with alliteration. And he figured out that alliteration meant that the first letter of his first name and the first letter of his last name should be the same letter. So he picked the name of his family dentist in southern Ohio, my grandfather, Dr. Roy Rogers. So we're all Roy Rogers, senior, junior, and the third. Sue and I have a son, Rick. He's Roy Rogers the fourth, but he doesn't have any children, so the name's going to stop there. So here he is, Roy Rogers on his horse Trigger from Duck Run, Ohio, with his wonderful wife, Dale Evans. So both Roy and Dale were previously married, had children from their previous marriages, kept the children after the marriages broke up, and got together and had a natural family themselves, and they adopted about 13 Korean War orphans, children born of Korean women who were sired by U.S. Troops in Korea, and they were not acceptable to the Korean culture, so Roy and Dale took them in, put them on their ranch in California, and raised them as their own children. Really fine people. We were lucky to have such a fine person with our name, and he did us well. Both have, Roy and Dale have passed away, and they moved the ranch, the museum from the ranch in California to Branson, but then the attendance fell off in Branson, and so they started raffling off and auctioning off everything. And millions of dollars for his parade cars. The stuffed Trigger went to a Kansas City barbecue restaurant, and a variety of other things. So here are the four Roy Rogers of our family, my father and me at the time of the Vietnam War, with Daddy Roy in the middle and our son Rick in his lap. So here I am, starting my staff pictures at Mayo Clinic in the 70s through the 80s and 90s and into the new century. And those were put together for one of my retirements, and morphine picture of me. And here we are now. So practiced 38 years in Rochester, Minnesota. Mayo Clinic opened a practice in Florida and then one in Arizona. Now we're associated with a practice in Arizona. This is Rochester, and this is Florida. This is the Shea campus of the Arizona practice. Now, many of the pictures you see of patients, the patients have given us, Mayo people, their permission to use their images for teaching purposes. Now, your skin is the largest organ of your body. It's like saran wrap covering all of your good stuff, the inside, and it's very important to your overall health. It protects the tissues and organs inside your body. It keeps germs and other harmful substances out, and it keeps moisture in. We'll be talking about what happens if you live in a dry climate, a desert climate, where the humidity is low. Regulates your body temperature, shields you from ultraviolet light, and senses pain, heat, and cold. So here it is, protecting you from bad bugs, staph and strep, providing resilience and strength to the skin. You pull the skin up, it snaps back in place, not as fast as it did 25 years ago, but still goes back. Collagen and elastic tissue. So our topics here about the skin will be myths and truths. Then we'll talk a little bit about a group of things we use on our skin, given the name cosmeceuticals, have cosmetic as well as pharmacological qualities. Dry skin, aging skin, and sun damage. So how about myths? Is soap necessary for the skin? A lot of people think soap is necessary for cleansing the skin. The fact is that soap literally is a detergent. And detergents are supposed to reduce the bacterial population, and by doing so, maybe they would reduce body odor. So do we really need soap on our skin? Soaps are detergents, and they can be irritating, and they remove deeper oils of the skin. We have non-soap emollient bars, which are certainly adequate for removing surface oils. So Neutrogena, Aveeno, a variety of products. If you have to have a bar in your hand when you're getting in the shower or the bathtub, you don't have to have soap, a detergent in that bar. Soap is necessary for cleansing of the skin, and in fact, as mild skin cleansers have added lipids and emollients, they avoid detergents, antiperspirants, fragrances, so they're not so irritating. Here's the name of some. They're fine. We like to have our patients with acne using these very mild hand bars if they want to clean their face with some soapy kind of thing. Neutrogena, Vanicream, Dove, and Basis are good products. Soap is necessary for cleansing the skin. The skin should feel soft and smooth, never tight and dry after cleansing. If you get tight and dry sensation in your skin, you've taken all the detergents off and you've not done your skin a good service. We like for you to use lukewarm water rather than really hot water, because hot water can cause a lot of itching. So, most of us grew up with the idea that if you didn't use a detergent soap, then you might smell bad, and that would be bad. That would not be a good idea. So, what it causes body odor? Sweat, as it comes out onto the surface of our skin, doesn't have any odor at all. It's delivered onto the surface of the skin, and it's sitting there. Water outside on the surface of the skin. Odors are volatile vapors. They have to go up into the air as a vapor to get to the nose to be perceived as an odor. So when bacteria that live on the skin act on the boggy, wet outer part of the skin and release sulfur-based oxides, which can become vapors, then you can have a bad odor. So there might be some value in reducing the bacteria, which is what a detergent would do. So here's a picture of a duct pore, a sweat duct pore coming out onto the surface of the skin, and here is sweating occurring in the palm of the skin. This is important in regulating heat and is regulating balance. So, how do you manage body odor? Do you use a deodorant, or do you use an antiperspirant, or what, or both? And what is the difference? Deodorants are masking fragrances, so they are a counter fragrance. If you have something bad, then you overcome it with something good. An antiperspirant is a salt of aluminum, and it squeezes the pores shut so the sweat doesn't get out. Still sweat, it just doesn't make it out onto the surface of the skin. And most people use a combination, say under the armpits, of an antiperspirant and a deodorant together. Now, if you were trying to keep down the bacteria, there would only be certain places you would need to keep down the bacteria. And this would be the airplane bathing. The only place you would need a detergent to combat body odor is under the wings and tail.